Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Leadership Lounge. Thank you all for coming. My name is Meenu Sharma, and I am a member of MSOL program, second term of the Goodwin College. I'm so excited today because our speaker is here, and I know her personally. I have the privilege to working with her at Charter Oak Cultural Center. It is a wonderful experience to watch her in action as a leader over the last few years. As we know, leading is not about a dictatorship. Leading is about the fact that people need to be inspired when they work with you. People need to understand that you are the person that will bring them out from the challenges you see. A good leader is a person who sheds light into a dark tunnel, and our speaker personifies all of these qualities and more. And I'm talking about Rabbi Donna Berman, and she's an executive director of Charter Oak Cultural Center. She holds Ph.D. in religion and social ethics from Drew University. She is the author of many articles. She is the co-editor of the Coming of Lilith essay on feminism, Judaism, and sexual ethics from 1973 to 2003 by Judith Palaskow. Rabbi Berman received Leadership Greater Hartford's Polish Award in Art and Culture. She has been honored by American Friends Service Committee for her work in social justice. She is the recipient of Human Relations Award from the National Conference for Community and Justice. Rabbi Donna Berman was named one of the Hartford's 12 most influential people by Hartford Magazine. She has deeply influenced me. When I think of her, the four things come in my mind is her empathy, how she inspired others. She leads by example, and she is determined to change the world. And with no more further delay, please join me in giving a warm goodwill welcome to our speaker tonight, Rabbi Donna Berman. Please come and join us over here. Welcome, Donna.
Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. I just want to say that I have been influenced by Meenu. And Meenu is an amazing leader. So for you to say those kind things about me is quite a compliment, because Meenu is the director of our BOTS programming, which is programming, 3 programs we have for the homeless community at Charter Oak Cultural Center. And she is a leader with so much heart. And that's really what I wanted to talk to you today about, kind of leading, with the heart. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about my background. And Sandy said I have 3 hours to talk to you. So just look at the food. I guess, I'm very grateful to be here because I love Goodwin College, and Goodwin College and Mark Scheinberg have been so good to us at Charter Oak Cultural Center. And I'm so grateful to Sandy for this invitation, because it forced me to kind of think about, well, how did I get here? And the answer was kind of interesting to me. I hope it'll be interesting to you. So I kind of thought about 3 separate things that happened in my life that I think have really been, really kind of pushed me into thinking that I could even possibly be a leader. And the first thing is my dad. I grew up in the 60s, and my dad told me, you can be anything you want to be. And he said to me, you could be president of the United States. Now, in the 1960s, not too many people were saying that to women. And so I took him, because I lived in such a supportive environment, at least in that way, I took him at his word. And so I came to him, and when I was like I was 9 years old, and I said, I want to be a rabbi. Now, there was no such thing. There were no women rabbis. But I never thought that. Every rabbi I happened to know was a male, but I never kind of looked at a greater pattern. And I didn't think that was revolutionary at all. But I could never have thought that had my father not said that to me. And it kind of leads me to this whole idea that I think next to I love you, the most beautiful thing we can say to each other is I believe in you. And what makes somebody know that they can be a leader, like even think that they could be a leader, is somebody really saying, yeah, you could be. We need to say that to each other more. It's amazingly powerful. So the second thing that kind of influenced me was my brother, who's 8 years older than I am, was very involved in the civil rights movement. And he was, because of his age, he would have gone to Vietnam. He happened to pick a good draft number. But he was very much involved in the anti-war movement. He was very much involved in the civil rights movement. He gave me Eldridge Cleaver's Soul on Ice to read when I was 13. And again, it was, you know what? There is a lot of injustice. There is a lot of injustice out there, and you have something important. Each one of us has something important to say and to do about that. So that was really a great influence on me. And the third thing is, in those days, I belonged to a Reform synagogue. There are different kinds of Judaism, and Reform is one of the more progressive movements in Judaism. And we had a book. This was quite a few years ago, and I don't remember much of anything, but I do remember this. It was a blue loose sleeve. The book was about social justice, and each chapter was about. And remember, this is the '60s, and we were in I think the 5th grade. Abortion, the Vietnam War, racism, sexism. These issues are changing all the time, so we have to have a loose sleeve so we can put more chapters in. And they would come in the mail in cellophane, and we would put them in the loose sleeve. It was like amazing. And this was part of what was called prophetic Judaism, not pathetic, prophetic, with the word prophet in it, not P-R-O-F-I-T, but P-R-O-P-H-E-T. And in those days, it was kind of the big deal in Reform Judaism. It was that the message of it was, it's not yes, it's great if you light Shabbat candles, and yes, it's great if you go to the temple, and it's great. But what's really important is, what kind of person are you? What are you doing to help the world? And all of that in the mix really led me to this idea that I should become a rabbi, because that was going to be a way. There's a concept in Judaism called tikkun olam, which means to repair the world. The world is a shattered place, and we have to kind of piece it together. And that gave me this idea that, oh, you know what, I'm going to be a rabbi. And then, of course, my father had told me I can do anything. And so, just tell you a little aside. So I went to Rabbi Milstein, oh God, and this is being recorded, isn't it? Okay, everybody, we all vowed to silence here. He said to me, I told him that I wanted, let me backtrack. So I went to him and I said to him, I want to tell you something, because I had just really realized that I wanted to be a rabbi. And so he was in the office, and in those days, this is how old I am, all the teachers were men. And so I said, can I talk to you for a minute? I want to tell you something. And he said, well, whatever you want to tell me, you can tell me in front of all the teachers. And I knew that wasn't going to be good. I was 9 years old, but I knew. But I didn't want to be disrespectful, so I said, you know what, Rabbi, I want to be a rabbi. And he looked at the other men, and he kind of smirked, and he said, you're not going to understand this now, but you'll understand it someday. You cannot be a rabbi because you could never be a father figure. So is this innuendo, about my body. And I walked out of there, and I was like, oh, God. So I never mentioned it to him again, but it was, all these years later, I obviously remember it. So at my bat mitzvah, so 4 years later, and I never talked to him about it, at my bat mitzvah, he got up in front of everybody and he said, I'm going to tell you a secret. Donna wants to be a rabbi. And I was like, yeah. that was not yours to say. Oh, no. So, and he said, the day she's ordained, I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna bless her. And you know what? He was. A zillion years later, he was. Anyway, I digress, but that's kind of it. But it just goes to show you that the road to a dream is not easy. And that doesn't mean you should stop pursuing it, but it's not easy, and there are all these kinds of setbacks. So anyway, I went to rabbinical school. When I entered rabbinical school, there were 4 women rabbis in the world. And by the time I left 5 years later, rabbinical school is 5 years late, is 5 years long, I was the 47th woman to be ordained. So it was a pretty cool thing. So I had my own congregation for 12 years. And then I decided I wanted to leave, and I wanted to go back to graduate school, and I wanted to write books about Jewish feminist theology. And so then I as Meenu said, I got a Ph.D. in religion and social ethics. And then I was looking, after I got my Ph.D., and my goal was to turn my dissertation into a book, which I haven't done yet. And I wrote it in 2001. Do you think it's still relevant? Okay, sadly, it is. So it will get turned into a book at some point. And then I came to the Charter Oak Cultural Center by happenstance. I mean, it feels like it was really the hand of God. And this is my 18th year there. And I want to tell you one other thing that I do, and then I want to just tell you a little bit about how I think about leadership. I'm also involved at the Heart for Family Institute, which is a body-centered Gestalt therapy institute. And I am a graduate of their program, and now I teach there. And I really feel that what fundamental to being a good leader is knowing yourself, like knowing where you end and the other person begins, because so often, and you know, I think people are talking about leadership more and more these days, because I think many people think that we're in a little bit of a leadership vacuum in our country. But in order to be a good leader, I think you really need to be introspective. You really need to know what your issues are, because you can have an issue and you can go to work and you can feel angry or whatever, and without even knowing it, be looking for something that's going to justify your anger, justify you acting out from that place of anger. So what we try to do at Charter Oak is really support people where they are and really be as loving as possible. Because there have been lots of articles, especially lately, about kind of pushing people. There's maybe I don't know, this may be too much of a generalization, but in a corporate environment, there's a sense that if you really want to push people, and it's going to be tough love, and I, first of all, I think there's an ethical imperative not to act that way, but also it's not, people don't become more, and I hate this word when it's applied to people, productive. People do their best, and people flourish in love, with love, in a soil that is nourishing. And so that's what we try to create at Charter Oak. And what I always say to people on the staff is, so our mission is to do the work of social justice through the arts. And so we have, as Meenu was alluded to, we have 3 programs for the homeless community. And I'll tell you about them in a minute if we have time. And we have a school, a youth arts institute for 1,000 underserved Hartford children, and they get sophisticated education in the arts, like years of it. No one-offs, classes in guitar and piano and drawing and painting and theater, and it's all completely free. And then we're housed in the first synagogue built in Connecticut, and the sanctuary is our performance space. And we have all of these professional performances, and we never turn anybody away who can't afford a ticket. So I did not start with these gray hairs. I got them because that's the dumbest business model ever. How are you going to make money? It's crazy. The fact that we've lasted 18 years like this is crazy. It's like a miracle. But I do believe that if you put out love and you put out good intention, and you have, a little bit of savvy and a little bit of street smarts, maybe you come from New York, and you can do it. And we're kind of proof positive that you can do it. But I always say to the staff, the inside has to match the outside. So you can't do the work of social justice and talk about kindness and talk about connecting to people in a really profound way, and not have people on the staff treat each other that way, and have, so it's really has to be, if we're going to be about love and we're going to be about justice, we have to practice that inside, or people can tell, and they should be able to tell, and it's not genuine, and you're not going to be effective, and you're not going to really implement the dreams that you have, because it's not, there's the foundation is rotting. Sometimes I think, all of the racism and all of the classism and all of the terrible things that have come to the surface in the last couple of years are actually good, because the foundation wasn't good, and we tried to paper over it, and we tried to build over it. And in order to really heal and to really make progress, you need to really get down deep, and you need to clean that stuff out. And so I think if an organization, no matter how virtuous its mission is, if an organization isn't that way through and through, it just doesn't work. And I think that one of the reasons we are able to work with this terrible business model is because you can feel the heart. You can feel the heart. So, it used to be that people thought, you'd evaluate, you'd evaluate people, and you'd say, well, you're good at this and you're good at this, but you're not that good at this. So spend, that's where you have to spend your time. And now people are saying, and it makes perfect sense, no, spend your time on what you're good at, and get somebody else to do the thing that somebody's bad at. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels. And, and that's a way of kind of giving people the soil in which to flourish. If you see them and you know what they can do, and you support them in deepening their knowledge of that particular skill or that area. So it's just like the business model we have is a little counterintuitive. Maybe the leadership model and community model we have at Charter Oak is also a little counterintuitive. But I have found that it's really, when you trust people and you love people, and that's not to say you don't say to somebody, look, this is not a good fit, because some people, can't function well in that environment. But you do everything with holding the other person's dignity. And I feel like the only way to do that is if you know yourself, because we're human beings, and we act out. And so I wanted to say, I'm a big proponent of therapy. I think it's really hard to be a leader if you don't hold up a mirror to yourself and really know where your shadow side is, and to be able to really own it. And I'll give you an example. How are we doing on time? You okay? I'll give you an example. So I went to the eye doctor. That's why I'm not wearing my glasses right now. No, it's not good. But I went to the eye doctor last week, and I went in, and they said, can we help you? And I said, yeah, I'm here. And they said, what are you here for? And I said, yeah, I'm here to see Dr. So-and-so. And they said, oh, Dr. So-and-so's not here. And I was like, but when I made the appointment, I said I only wanted to see Dr. So-and-so. Yeah, no, he's only at this other office. He's not really here. And I was like, and I could feel, that place of, oh my God, my blood pressure, my head's gonna pop off that feeling? So she said, we have Dr. So-and-so, and they can give the report to Dr. So-and-so. And meanwhile, I could just feel myself. And because that's part of being human. So it's not a matter of getting rid of those feelings. It's a matter of being aware of them. And that's how you get to be a good leader, loving leader. It's that, and it's also bringing compassion to yourself. By owning what you're feeling and bringing compassion to yourself. We can't have compassion, real compassion. Remember, the inside's got to match the outside. That's true for us too. So if you can't bring compassion to yourself, you can't genuinely bring it to other people. So I said to this woman, so she's telling me all these things, and I'm like this. And I said, you know what? I said, I am so cranky now because of this, and I know it's not your fault, and I just don't want to sit here with that passive aggressive energy at you and that kind of silent, that kind of silent treatment thing. It's like, with your teeth gritted. And so I said, and as soon as I said that, I was able to come back down into myself, but I didn't want to do that to her. How many I wanted to end? 4 minutes? Okay, I just want to end with one more thing. I had lunch with a donor today, So I had to like switch hats completely. I'm about to ask you all for money, but I didn't really switch hats adequately enough. But and we were talking about the fact that how wonderful is it to wake up every day and say, what good can I do in the world today? What good can I do? And if you're a leader, and you know, so and Meenu touched on this. It's not about being a dictator. It's not. You got to ask yourself. Oh, yeah, it'll come up in the question she's going to ask me. You got to really, really look at why you want to be a leader. Is it because you have a dream of how the world could be? Is it because you want to impact this? You want to find a cure for that, or is it because of your ego? Now, if you find it's because of your ego, then you have to bring compassion to that and know that, and then you can deepen that. So there's nothing bad. There's nothing you can work with. You can work with anything. You just have to be honest. And I think you also have to be, you know, in that honesty about who you are, and we all have shadow sides. We all have good things. We're a human being. That's just about part of being a human being. But there's a humility that comes with that. And I think that that's something, you know, we talked about the leadership vacuum. I think that instead of humility, it's another H word that we're seeing is hubris. As soon as you have hubris, you can't lead. You can threaten people, you can bully people, you can do all kinds of things, but that is not leading. Leading, really, is helping everybody into their best selves so that they too actually can be a leader. And I guess I'm going to end full circle with what my father said. You can be anything you want to be. And I want to say to you, I believe in you. So that's it.
Thank you, Donna, for such an enlightening and inspiring talk this evening. Thank you. Now it's our turn to deep digger with Donna. And after then, you guys are going to get a chance to ask us some questions. So would you please join me on the chair over here? So, and now I'm going to ask you 3 questions about the leadership. So my first question is, what is the best leadership advice you have ever received?
You know, I recently, like within the last 2 weeks, read something, and I believe it or not, I think it's the best advice I ever got. It was a quote by, and I'm paraphrasing, I couldn't find it again. I was like, oh my God, I got to write that down. And then you ever had that happen? It's like, where is that? But I think it was a quote by somebody like Churchill, somebody like that. And it was, every time I find myself in a leadership position, I feel suspicious of myself. So I think, I love that.
Okay. So my second question is 3 words to describe leadership today.
Well, this is the kind of leadership I would like to, personally would like to see more of. I don't think it's necessarily what leadership is today. I could give you 2 lists, but the leadership that I'm interested in is, it's heartful, it's courageous, and it's visionary. And I'll tell you what I mean by courageous, because that's probably the most interesting word in there. I think you really have to be prepared to fail, and you really have to be comfortable with mistakes, and you have to let people who are working with you know that. I heard a guy on NPR, and he was saying that we really haven't made a lot of progress in cancer research because people are afraid not to be successful in their experiments, and there's a way that we're asked to know in advance how things are going to turn out. Well, what that means is you never really progress. You're kind of in an echo chamber. So everybody's so afraid. Like, what if they give me all this money and I don't? Well, from mistakes, you can figure out really cool things. Mistakes are great. So, so an environment where everybody feels like, you know what, I can try new things, and I can be courageous about that. By the way, I'll just tell you, there's a book called I think it's called The Anatomy of Happiness. And this NPR correspondent went he went all over the world. Believe it or not, there's a happiness index of countries. And Iceland is one, I think it might even be number one, right? It's Iceland, right? So he went there and he said, I don't understand. It's dark, it's cold. Why is this such a happy place? And they said, because we're not afraid of making mistakes and failing.
It's really great. So what is your next act?
I'll be performing in Pippin next week at... well, here's my plan. I would like to, please God, stay at Charter Oak Cultural Center. We have a capital campaign going on, and we're going to build a building for the kids because right now everybody's shoehorned into our original building, and we have waiting lists for all our classes for these kids. So we're going to build a building that's attached to ours, and we're going to redo the sanctuary, so restoring it in many ways to the way it looked in 1876. And I'd like to finish that in the next couple of years. And there are a couple other things I'd like to add on programmatically. And so I'm thinking, maybe another 7 years, if, as long as my strength and I can stand up straight still and all that kind of stuff. And then I would like to teach, and I'd like to write. And I have a tiny, tiny therapy practice. It's only for people this big. No. So it's a niche audience, and grow that, and grow my therapy practice.
It's really, thank you sharing for your insight. So these are my 3 questions. Now it's time to turn to the audience. So who has a question for the Donna?
Can you give us an example of, because you gave us all these positive insights that what gave you the courage to succeed and have confidence in your ability, but did you have an obstacle or an adversity that made you wonder, and how did you progress through that?
Are you talking about within the last 24 hours? Because have I faced challenges or a particular challenge that led me to?
That made you question, is this the right path, and switch directions or anything? How it influenced you?
Yeah, we just had a staff meeting last week about the capital campaign to tell the whole staff about where we are in our progress towards, it's $6.5 million. I don't even, how many zeros is that? It's like, oh my God. But not just to talk about the money, but to talk about the kind of the sacred task of restoring this old synagogue, building this school for kids. We have 3 programs, as I said, for the homeless community. They're going to have their own dedicated space. And I was saying that, oh my God, there have been so many days when I woke up and I was like, I've never done anything like this. What am I doing? People are giving us money. Are we going to be able to do it? Are we going to, and thinking this was a horrible idea. And I was saying to them, anything that's important, you're always going to feel that way. So once you know that that's part of it, the setbacks are part of it, and that it's by the way, aside, anybody ever listen to Tara Brach? Okay. Am I right about this? This will be the most, you'll go home and go, I don't know what she said, I was sleeping, but I heard her say Tara Brach. It's Tara Brach, TaraBrach.com. And then you go to her website and then go to talks. She also has meditations, but I do the talks. She's so brilliant. She's so funny. And you're going to get annoyed by her voice. Breathe through it, okay? But it's so insightful. So anyway, she tells this story. Oh, so she talks about there are waves and there's the ocean. So we got to get used to the fact that there are waves. There's such a perfectionism in our society. And if anything goes wrong, we're like, oh God, oh man, oh, it must be a sign I shouldn't do this. The opposite. It's just, take a breath that night and then figure your way around it. So it's a wave in a bigger ocean, and you got to keep your eye on the ocean. But she also tells this story about this 97-year-old woman who's in the hospital, and she finds out that she's terminally ill, and the woman goes, "Why me?" So so they got some smiles over there. So you gotta, you just know that there are certain things that are part of it. But we had, I'll tell you a story. That's what rabbis do, right? We were informed that a very important musical institution in Hartford was going under. And we conceived this way to save it. And we would make, it would become an annex to Charter Oak. It was another part of town. And we needed to raise, I think, $200,000 a year to do this over 4 years. So $800,000, which it really is not, on the scheme of things, not that much money. So I spent 10 months with the director of that institution that was going under, going to Bank of America, going to Hartford Hospital, going to Aetna, going to, everywhere. And the Hartford came forward and said, we'll give you 200. Aetna said, well, maybe we'll give you more than 200. People were starting to step forward. And we had this big community meeting. I can't tell you, I ate, drank, slept, or didn't sleep this thing for 10 months. We had this big meeting. We get everybody in the room. They say, okay, we have a few more questions, but they were going to come forward with these $200,000 donations, presumably. And they were going to tell us by August 31st. In the meeting, this is how much of an imprint it made on me. It was August 6th of whatever year it was. And on August 9th, the people from this organization came and they said, oh, we got a check from a magnet school and they bought us. We're done. And I got to tell you, it was so devastating to me. Like all the wind came out. It was just punched out of my sails, and I felt honestly, I felt a little bit catatonic, and I didn't want to do anything. I was really depressed. It had been such a dream. It could have been so wonderful. We would have done all the music and dance there, and the visual arts at Charter Oak. It would have been such a boon for Hartford. Oh my God, we had like these. It was delicious. It was a delicious dream. And about a month later, seriously, I was like going to work like this, and I got a call from an architect. And he said, my name is Iris Smith. My mother was once the chair of the board of Charter Oak Cultural Center, and I have some papers from when she was president of the board, and I thought you might like to have them. I live in Montclair, New Jersey. Can I bring them to you? And I said, sure. And he said, yeah, and I'm an architect down here. And one of the people I work with said, now that we don't have this other organization, let's focus on our building. And I was like, what? I was like drooling and stuff. And she said, no, he's been, it was Rebecca, he's been invested in this building for the last 20 years. He went to Harvard Architecture School and he had drawn up drawings of the building. Let's talk to him about this. And I was like, I'm telling you. So she did all the talking because I was basically, and that became the beginning of this capital campaign, where we raised now 2.5 million on our way to 6.5 million. So, that whole thing, one door closes and another one opens. So it was a long answer to your question, but yes, I have felt devastated, discouraged, everything that starts with a D, I have felt.
So, who want to go next?
Did you want to scratch your head or you wanted to say something? It's like being at an auction. You can't. You just bought a painting.
So, who want to go next? Anyone has any question?
Hi, thanks so much for being here tonight. Based on your story, I'm curious what advice you would have for women to be successful in their careers, however they define that. And the second part of that is, how can men support women in their careers?
Well, there's a great feminist saying, and I can't remember who said it. Feminism is not a matter of adding women and stirring. I think that what's important is for all of us, men and women, to be ourselves and not try to be the image of who we think we should be. And I think that in my professional life as a rabbi, there were, and I get why, and I probably did it myself, but I'm just too cocky to believe that. But hubris again. You can't. Don't try to be a man. Don't try to be, whatever the corporate model is or whatever. Be yourself. Bring your own personality. Bring your own. And again, I don't want to be reductive about this. That men are this way and women are this way, but we are socialized in certain ways. But bring your unique gifts. Don't try to imitate. Again, this is for everybody. Don't try to imitate anybody else. And that whole lean in thing. I mean, I didn't read the book. I just was so annoyed by the title. Really, I always say this to people who I'm helping with resumes and stuff. Don't follow the template. Don't do it. And it's like it's true for life. Don't follow the template. Be different. Just think of it. If you're the employer and you're reading, 25 letters or whatever, you don't want to read the objective, blah, 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 to bring myself, you want to read a cover letter that says, I know you're tired and you've read 24 other letters and let me tell you why you should read mine. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself, because you know what? People will take notice of you, and if they don't take notice of you and they're critical, you don't want to be with them anyway. So I think, and for men, I think it's such a good question. Supporting women. I think, first of all, I think there are so many microaggressions against, focused on women, imposed on women. Talk about knowing yourself. I think it's in the air we breathe, and I think we do things that unconsciously. I think the whole idea of this is to become conscious and to say, I'm going to be conscious as I can, because you know what? All of us, all people in the dominant group, not that men are in the dominant group, because aren't women 51%? But they're called the dominant group. We can people in the dominant group can be racist, can be sexist. We are. Like, let's own it. And when somebody says to you, or says to me or whoever, you know what, that was racist, that was classist, that was sexist, instead of saying, oh God, you must, and get all up in arms about it, you know what, that's proof positive that you are, because you're not listening. So we got to listen to each other. And when someone says, there's a great rabbinic story. This student comes to a rabbi and says, Rabbi, I love you. And the rabbi doesn't say anything. And he says, Rabbi, I love you. And the rabbi doesn't say anything. He says, Rabbi, I love you. How come you're not listening to me? And the rabbi turns to him and says, do you know what hurts me? And the rabbi says, the student says, what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm telling you, I love you. What are you talking about? And the rabbi says, until you know what hurts me, you can't love me. So we have to really think about, not from our perspective, oh yeah, that shouldn't hurt you, that shouldn't bother you. But when someone, either in our lives, said, that in our personal lives or in the community says, that hurts, we have to listen. So.
That's a really great answer. It's awesome. So we have time to our very last question. So anyone has a last question over here? There's no one? Okay.
Really? No? Oh, come on, one more. Like, don't you want to know what my favorite color is or something? Got nothing?
Okay.
Oh.
Do you have
John.
any leaders that you would say are role models for you, and why? People you would say you learn, inspire from, or just capture you? That's what I think.
I kind of thought, again, one of the gifts of this was thinking about that, even though it wasn't going to be one of the questions. I think I have 3 answers to that. I'm sure I have more, but well, one is Emma Goldman, who was an anarchist who lived in the 20s. She was kind of at her prime in the 20s. She was opposed to World War I, and she was from Russia. She had left Russia at 16 to come here to find a better life for herself. And she was deported and sent back to Russia. And she was only allowed to come back to the United States like one time. And she was stigmatized. She was called Red Emma because everybody said she was a communist. But she believed in justice for workers. She believed in racial justice. I mean, she was so ahead of her time. And one of my favorite stories about her is she was speaking at a rally for social justice and for workers' rights. And this is how long ago it was. She was in the back of a truck speaking, and there were horses. It was a horse-drawn truck, and one of her opponents hit the backside of the horse, so it would run away. And she's in the back of the wagon, and she wouldn't stop talking. And people ran after her to hear her words. I'm like, that's courage. That's really cool. And then I would say, and believe me, I remember I told you about therapy. So sometimes he doesn't come out smelling like a rose, but tonight he's gonna. My father, one time the kid next door, and I really think this was leadership. The kid next door hit me over the head with a stick. And so I got a stick from inside the house, and I went and I sat on the stoop. I was 30, by the way. It was terrible. So I was sitting on the stoop with a stick because I was waiting for him to come out, and I was going to hit him on the head. And my father came out, and he sat down next to me, and he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, when Tommy comes outside, he hit me, I'm going to hit him." And he said, "I want you to think about something." He said, "Two wrongs don't make a right." Now, I was like 9 years old. And I was like, "What?" And he got up and he went inside. And I got it. It took me a little while, but I got it. And all these years later, it's like 5 years later, I still remember it. And the third person, you know what? I'm sorry, but President Obama, right? I mean, so much heart, so much class, what a wonderful speaker, so inspiring, so careful and thoughtful in his decisions, and what a unifier, except for those who hate. But it's hard to unify those who hate because they're committed to being on the periphery. I don't think it's impossible, but very difficult. So I would say those three people.
That's great. So, on the behalf of everyone, we appreciate your generosity of time and wisdom. Thank you so much, Donna, to come here tonight and share your insight with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.